Hello, welcome to the National Public Lands Day 2023 webinar. While folks are still joining, we'd love to get to know you a little better. If you can, find your way to the chat and please introduce yourselves, your name, where you're located, and how you are connected to National Public Lands Day. Welcome to those of you coming in now. I'm going to get started in just a minute. While you're joining, we're going to have you find your way to the chat and introduce yourselves. So let's go ahead and get started, and folks can trickle in. My name is Kelly Burnett, and I'm the Program Director of Conservation at the National Environmental Education Foundation, or NEEF. We do have closed captioning available on today's webinar. You can turn it on by selecting Show Captions at the bottom of your screen, or by using the screen reader alerts on Zoom. You may notice the live stream option in the corner of your screen. While this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you after the fact, the live stream is only activated to enable accurate captions today. So to get us started, NEEF is the organization responsible for coordinating National Public Lands Day. And I'm so thrilled to have so many past and potential site managers here on the call with us today. I began at NEEF last summer and have the pleasure of working closely with our federal, our state, our local agency partners on NPLD, as well as with NEEF's conservation-related grantees throughout the rest of the year. I live in Houston, Texas, and my background's in volunteer management and community-driven park improvement programs and in grant management. So before we get started with our discussion, I'd like to go over how we'll run today's webinar. We'll use the chat feature for introductions. Thank you for doing that so far. And we'll also share links and useful resources as we go through the presentation there in the chat. If you have questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. Please help us improve our webinars and the NPLD resources available every year by completing the survey. It'll pop up in your Zoom window as you exit today's. But let's go ahead and get officially started. I'm delighted to introduce Sarah Espinoza, who's going to start our discussion today. She's the president and CEO of NEEF. She oversees leadership, driving the organization's mission, values, and vision while ensuring effective governance and sustainable growth. Some of you may have known Sarah in her previous role as VP of Programs for NEEF, where she oversaw design, integration, execution, and evaluation of programs, including National Public Lands and Conservation, but also K through 12 education and health. So please welcome Sarah Espinoza.
Thank you, Kelly, and really happy to be here to just offer a few words of welcome to all of you. I have personally participated in 18 National Public Lands Days, and I love seeing the comments in the chat about people who have been planning events for decades and people who are planning their first one. It's really great to see that. As Kelly mentioned, National Public Lands Day is a signature event of NEEF's and really fosters a strong connection between people and the environment. And over the years, the event has become a lot more than just volunteerism. We love getting people out to protect and restore their public lands, but also love seeing National Public Lands Day evolve to be about connecting to community and connecting to public lands for education, health, and conservation. NPLD had really humble beginnings. We started with just one federal agency partner, 2 sites, and 700 volunteers. And we are now the largest single-day volunteer event for public lands. That certainly would not be possible without our federal, state, and community partners like all of you. You have really helped this event grow into something that is nationwide, really impactful, and it's exciting to look ahead to the next 30 years of National Public Lands Day. So we're here to support your efforts to help you make National Public Lands Day a memorable event, and really just wanted to take this moment to say thank you for being here today and also for being part of National Public Lands Day. Again, it would not be possible without all of you. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Kelly.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a perfect launch into our next piece. We'd like to have a poll quickly at the top of this so we can understand how many National Public Lands events you've all been a part of as we get our speakers ready. So how many National Public Lands Day have you been a part of? Maybe it's your first time this year, potentially. Maybe you've had a couple under your belt, 4 through 7, or you're a total veteran and you have over 8 National Public Lands Day events that you've hosted. We'll just give that a few seconds. Okay, so it looks like a little over half of our attendees today, this will be their first National Public Lands Day that they're working on. Thank you for coming today and learning more. And then we've got nearly 40% in addition to that who are in their first or second or third event. Really exciting stuff, you guys. And shout out to those of you, a bit over 10%, who have been doing this for a long time. We'd love to hear from you in the chat as we go if you have good ideas or past things that you've done. So today we're delighted to be talking with 3 volunteer management experts. Each of them have a very different perspective on our topic today. So we've got perspectives from the academic, the nonprofit, and the federal agency sectors today. So to kick us off and to give us the foundation on volunteer trends and motivations, please allow me to introduce Dr. Angela Seaworth. Dr. Seaworth is the Director of Philanthropic Initiatives and Capacity Building at the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy at Texas A&M University, just down the street from me. She has more than 20 years of multifaceted experience in the nonprofit sector as a professional fundraiser, as a consultant, as a professor. And in the past decade, she's been focused on advancing the field through nonprofit education and research. And I hope this is one of the things that she'll chalk up to a part of advancing the field. So really happy to have her today. She has founded the Center of Philanthropy at Rice University, taught at the University of Notre Dame. She's done private consulting, and currently her work focuses on building capacity with nonprofit leaders. We're so happy to have her here. Please welcome Dr. Seaworth.
Thank you, Kelly. That's a very generous introduction. I appreciate it. I love working with folks who care about expanding our human capital in the nonprofit space. Can we see now? Good. And it's so important that we understand volunteerism is really the foundation of our philanthropic sector. So in the last year, I've had the opportunity to redesign our graduate level human resources and volunteer management course. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, the human capital challenges that nonprofit organizations are facing right now in our current environment. And I've done that a lot in the last year. So excited to share some of these ideas and what we've discovered about motivations with you. So today, quickly, we're going to discuss some foundations of where we are and how we think about volunteer management, the donor motivations, and then ways we can cultivate volunteers to retain them, acquire and retain. Both it can be challenging these days. And the other thing is I want to present very quickly a new model on how we might think about volunteer management that can help you as you apply this to your own organization, because all of you are going to have different needs. But as you assess what's happening with your own volunteer situation, I think we really need to draw from 2 disciplines. One is philanthropy, and 2 is human resources management. So when you think about foundations that we have from the evolution of philanthropy and volunteer management, one that my students and I've really enjoyed thinking about this spring comes from the International Association for Volunteer Effort. There's a statement that says volunteering is a fundamental building block of civil society. It brings to life the noblest aspirations of humankind, the pursuit of peace, freedom, opportunity, safety, and justice for all people. We need to make sure and have something about the environment added to that for this group. And at the dawn of the new millennium, volunteering is an essential element of all societies. And that may seem really broad when we're thinking about how do we recruit folks to come help us out on a specific day. But what it speaks to is this idea that volunteerism is really fundamental to a life well lived and to communities that are thriving. It's a fundamental belief that those who are managing volunteers really need to not just believe themselves, but to convey as we try and acquire and recruit volunteers. Okay. The other thing is that really aligns with how we think about the word philanthropy. That's so off-putting. When we hear that word, many people in the general public are just like, well, that's not me, right? I can volunteer my time. But the way we define it is philanthropy is voluntary action for the public good. So we're trying to connect this noble action with somebody, who cares about your organization, who cares about your community, for whatever reason, to help them understand intrinsically that what they're doing matters to our world. And that gives us a really deep meaning. So the one thing that we do know when we ask people why they stop volunteering is that they don't feel like they're making a difference. So keeping these fundamental thoughts that I've just shared with you about, the aspirations of volunteerism in society, how it helps shape communities, keeping that in the background of your messaging, not overlooking the importance of the social capital elements of trying to recruit people to come together for one day to try and help with a park. We can talk about that in a way that is really meaningful, and it makes the individuals feel connected to what we're doing, as opposed to, I spent 3 hours with some friends this afternoon, right? So that's sort of the background knowledge that we need to know. The other thing is, when we start to think about this, is it's always good to begin our analysis for any function, but particularly volunteer management, by knowing specifically where we stand. So let's think about some general knowledge of volunteering today. There is a report produced by AmeriCorps. Okay, AmeriCorps collaborates with the U.S. Census Bureau to collect data on volunteerism, and they release a study every 2 years. And you can actually access this, and I encourage you to do this. It's by typing in and searching the Volunteering and Civic Life in America report. So once you get that report, you can see national averages, but what you can do is drill down to metro areas. You can drill down into your own state and city to see your volunteer trends, because we can't address all of those with so many of you on the call. We can't individually address them. But what I can share is that some of the national statistics. We know the most recent report that was released last November says that nationally, our rate of formal volunteering, meaning working with an organization to volunteer, dropped 7%. And it dropped from 30% to 23%. That was in the height of the pandemic. Another way, though, we can think about that, and to think about the numbers at your organization, is to report it as an estimated 23% of Americans and roughly 61 million people formally volunteered between 2020 and 2021. So in addition to that, nearly 51% of Americans informally volunteered, meaning just helping their neighbors. So I think it's really important for us to think about how we're framing it. Sometimes when we are recruiting volunteers, we approach it from a scarcity mentality. That's why I gave the different way of framing the exact same data, is that, oh, we're desperate, we need this many people to come out and help on Saturday, versus, oh, we have this many people, but we'd like to have, 15 more because we can accomplish X amount, more than we could without them. So, I really encourage you to think about the language that you're using when you are starting to identify volunteer opportunities, and as you're trying to advertise and promote those, as not being from a point of scarcity or a reduction of volunteerism, but instead is an opportunity for someone to make a difference. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But I encourage you to really look at the trends of volunteerism within your own organization, and maybe how it's changed over the last couple of years, because the pandemic did shift all of our data and our experiences with volunteerism and giving. So identify some trends at all levels of your organization, but so you can strategically address the areas that will really help you make sure that you have the volunteers you need for each of your events. So for example, if you're having difficulty acquiring volunteers for an episodic one day, come clean up the park type of event, then we need to build some strategies around that, right? So try and identify those specific areas of concern. So then you can begin to address marketing and language around that would make the opportunities more appealing. So with all that said, many of you might be in a situation where volunteerism has declined. And you're not alone. Volunteerism has been declining in the United States for the past 20 years. And it's my opinion, and many of other scholar colleagues of mine, is that we need to return to the basics to understand why volunteerism really matters. It's kind of why I opened up with that foundation of let's think broadly about how volunteerism is going to shape our community, not, in addition to our specific park that we're working with. We have to remain open to new ways to engage volunteers, because in today's post-pandemic world and environment, things have definitely changed. I mean, we've lost some volunteers. Some of them have disappeared. Some of them are looking for shorter commitments. They're looking for virtual opportunities. So we have to be able to try and find creative donors, creative ways to engage donors. So let's think about the volunteer motivations. The first thing that can be helpful if you're new to volunteer management particularly is to embrace the fact that our volunteers have mixed motives. I wish I had, like this very formulaic way for you to make sure your volunteer roster is always filled. But the reality is that whenever you're engaging with people, there are going to be variations, right? So people volunteer for a variety of reasons. One, they care about what your organization does. They do this as a social outlet, as a way to get to know more people. It may be to develop skills or to explore different career paths. So keeping in mind that when you're trying to recruit volunteers, that they're going to have different reasons and motivations for what matters to them. But what we do know is that all volunteers can be motivated by either intrinsic rewards and extrinsic rewards. So the intrinsic, remember, those are, if we go back to some basic volunteer management courses, or you may have heard that it's about satisfaction. The intrinsic is when they start to truly believe in what you're doing and take ownership in your organization. It's the satisfaction of the work, the sense of accomplishment, being challenged. The extrinsic rewards, those are a little more of the tangible, right? Those are benefits granted from the organization. Come clean up today and you have some free, free park passes, or free speaking events. The other thing, it could be approving volunteer hours, particularly for episodic volunteers. So we encourage you to use active language when you're designing recruiting materials that shows how these folks are going to make a difference. Okay, that addresses the intrinsic. And then the extrinsic is, what are they going to get out of it if there is something along those lines, to make sure that you're communicating that up front. If you need volunteer hours can be approved by, filling out this form or having a QR code for somebody to get that information. Another challenge in today's environment is really trust. And for that, we really want to look at relational theories. And so we know that individuals who are fully engaged in an organization, they are motivated by two key things. They like to have multiple points of contact in an organization. Okay, so that means they value interacting with and being thanked by multiple people in the organization. And some of my younger grad students have described it as they want to feel seen. Okay. The other thing that we can do is think about how we are addressing their intrinsic needs to stay and make a difference with us. Okay, it's up to us to provide the individuals with meaningful work. And we have to be able to connect every single one of our volunteer projects to impact. So with that, that's where we think about this new model of volunteer management. This, we refer to it as or it's called the ratchet model, where you start to identify whether or not you need to loosen and make your volunteer management more aligned with participation, episodic, short events that don't require a lot of training, versus how you would recruit and use language for opportunities and volunteer opportunities that actually require more training and have longer impact. So we think about it as a ratchet, where you either loosen your volunteer management structure to address the shorter term volunteer philanthropic element, or if you tighten it to make it more along the lines of an employee. So for 1-day programs, you're going to be looking more at a philanthropic model of how do we make sure that we make the volunteer process appealing, and that's going to be speaking to their intrinsic motivation and to their impact. So with that, since I could do this for a whole semester, I will stop. And I hope that's given you a different way to think about some of the language that you use, and I'll be around after our other speakers to answer questions.
Amazing. Thank you. It's so important to have this type of connection between the research and the academic world and our on the ground practitioners that we have on the call today. So thank you for drawing those connections. Really excited to tie this into our second speaker and all that he does with Saguaro National Park. So our next speaker is Fred Stula, and he's the executive director of Friends of Saguaro National Park. And Friends furthers the mission of the national park, the fragile ecosystem there, and the significant cultural heritage of the Sonoran Desert. Fred has worked to improve the diversity and the community focus of the organization, pouring his efforts into building the next generation Ranger Corps, which some of you may be familiar with at the agency, culturally relevant environmental education programs, and volunteer opportunities across the board. He has a background in political science and a master's in public administration with a nonprofit emphasis. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what he has to say about what makes volunteerism at Saguaro successful, how to recruit and engage his community around big events like NPLD. Thanks for being here, Fred.
Yep. Thanks, Kelly. So as Kelly said, so my name's Fred. I'm the executive director for Friends of Saguaro National Park. So Friends in Saguaro National Park have a successful collaborative mission-driven volunteer program, and each year we recruit 750 volunteers that complete about 30,000 hours of service at the park, and that's actually time and talent valued at about $900,000 a year at the park. So we can go on to the next. Oh, these are some pictures of me doing volunteer events. So this is the next slide. So creating a volunteer event for National Public Lands Day must be well organized to be successful in engaging new, diverse, and passionate volunteers that want to volunteer again. So first up, so the volunteer project must be planned months in advance and be mission-driven, repeatable, and require no prior skills. So at Saguaro National Park, we focus on saguaro-related projects such as data collection, Saguaro Blooms Project, the ARMS Project, removing buffalo grass through protection efforts. So second, market the project to reach new and diverse local audiences and utilize the National Public Lands Day marketing. Invite local media to participate and cover the event. We have a lot of success when we organize volunteer events, inviting the local media to come out and actually do some of the work and then do a story on the event. So that's a really kind of a great free marketing and engagement strategy that every organization can employ. Third, so identify one contact person who volunteers sign up with and who is at the event to make the volunteers feel welcome, appreciated, expected, and just that they know someone at the event when they're coming up. So sign up needs to be direct, easy, and by easy, I mean one email address, and the email address has to have a person's name. If it's an email address that's info@Friends of Saguaro National Park or volunteers@Saguaro National Park, volunteers feel it's going to a black hole and they don't know who the person is on the other end. So having that level of easy, direct sign up really, really helps. Also to identify what the expectations are, so volunteers know what they're getting into and they can be, adequately prepared to participate fully in the event. So fourth, incorporate engaged recognition and relationship building at your event. So facilitate these personal relationships with other volunteers, park staff, and your staff. So some of the examples that we use is we have safety circle introductions. We set up challenges with rewards like bandanas and things. And these are some of the neck gaiters and bandanas that we hand out at our events. We also hand out water bottles. We even hand out small saguaros that people can take home. During the breaks when people are volunteering, everyone should be sitting together, and you should have some sort of a post-event barbecue or some sort of gathering. So nonprofits, just like Dr. Sewer said, nonprofits are voluntary associations, and they serve a really important role in our community to build a community of like-minded individuals. And that's why people are signing up for volunteer projects. After the event, provide even more recognition on social media, website, and the newsletter. And this recognition should show the impact of the work that volunteers do. So some examples of that are, how many saguaros did we survey when we were out there for 3 hours today? How much buffalo grass did we remove? What's the impact? What's the scientific data that was collected to help the park to develop conservation strategies? So it should be really clear when a volunteer comes out, they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, the impact of why they're doing it. And it leads right into the fifth point, is having future volunteer projects that the volunteers can sign up for. So the purpose of this event is not just for a one-day volunteer event, but it's to engage new frequent volunteers that you can cultivate into supporters, donors, and advocates. You should be sending volunteer monthly emails detailing new projects and programs that they can participate in, and working to keep them engaged beyond just this one kind of big culminating event each year. So the next slide. So volunteers can be recruited throughout the local community. So our recruitment strategies focus on local environmental groups, organizations where board members work, young professional groups, partner organizations, all the grants that I write in that section at the end where it says, do you want to say anything else? That's where I always encourage, we do it, and I encourage all other organizations to give opportunities for grantors to come out and actually help. So you're asking them for money to support programs and projects, give them the opportunity to come out and actually be a part of the program that they're supporting. It just helps to build these wonderful reoccurring volunteers, and also reoccurring grantors, because that's kind of the whole, the balance of philanthropic and also, volunteer support. Okay, so some of the other organizations, social media, community events, e-newsletter, local universities. I meet directly with professors that run environmentally focused schools, environmental education programs, biology, natural resources, even geology. So that's some of the ways that you can engage people. One of the things that I've found that's really impactful when I meet with different community groups, lots of people volunteer because there's a pride of ownership on the park that they live near. So people look at Saguaro National Park and go, this is our national park, and we have to be actively engaged to help make sure that it's as great as it can be, because there's a huge impact for nonprofits and for national parks, the impact that they have, like the economic impact that they create for local communities, and making sure volunteers understand there's a great social science program that the park puts out that actually shows the economic impact for each park throughout the country. So definitely take a look at that when it comes out, hopefully later this month. To increase equity at the park and engage diverse underrepresented communities, Friends in Saguaro National Park have developed strategic partnerships with local Latino and tribal organizations. So in Tucson, we have two large tribal communities that live out on reservations, the Pasquayaki and the Tohono O'odham. So we set up programs where you can actually bring the park to these different kind of underrepresented organizations and connect the park to them, bring them back out. So a lot of this kind of stuff starts through field trips, through junior ranger activities, environmental education programs, and these things grow into hiking clubs, youth camps, next gen rangers, volunteers, and also park staff. One of the other ways that we partner with the park to engage more people is we help the park participate in over 40 community events. And that's the photo on the screen, where we have all these events that people can get out to. They can learn about the park. They can learn about STEM nights, environmental education programs, get all the information from the park so they can then kind of come out and participate, not just in volunteer programs, because this is a much bigger thing than just volunteers. It's connecting people to the organization. Starting through free environmental education programs and building into the bigger things like volunteer program, those are things that can be really, really impactful. It takes time, and I think that's really important to know when you're getting into this. It's not a one-day event. It's about building a strategy with the park of how to engage the community in meaningful and impactful ways. And I think those are things that can get built into your strategies that can really transform how many volunteers all of the parks are able to engage, not just for this event, but for volunteer programs throughout the year. So thanks so much for the opportunity to present and provide you with some strategies and tips for your volunteer programs and for National Public Lands Day events. And please, add some questions into the chat at the end. I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Fred. Really appreciate that. We've had the pleasure of working together on a grant, and so I can tell you from that perspective, I totally agree. Anytime you can engage your funders and give them that extra opportunity to bring a team out, they love it, especially corporate audiences. But hey, NEEF loves it too. So I am excited to bring on our third and final speaker. And I worked closely with Maya last year in her role with the Bureau of Land Management on National Public Lands Day. She is the outreach specialist and state lead for youth education and volunteer programs in the Oregon-Washington region. Maya has worked in a variety of capacities for BLM for 25 years, including at the field level and also national headquarters. She is responsible for promoting and coordinating policies, programs, activities throughout her region to increase public engagement. With a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and planning and a master's in public administration like Fred, we are really excited to have her here to share her experience and her knowledge with us in her years with federal agencies and bringing that perspective to the table on planning a National Public Lands Day event. Thanks, Maya.
All right. Well, thanks so much for inviting me to join this conversation as your last speaker. I know I'm going to probably overlap with some of the other things that have been said, but hopefully I'll give some new twists or examples along the way. So, again, thanks for having me. Just right off the bat, I just really want to emphasize that public lands belong to all of us. And that is the spirit that we're really trying to convey with National Public Lands Day. So, as you said, 1994 was the first Public Lands Day, and it really has become a holiday where we get to celebrate our shared ownership of public lands. And how we celebrate is through volunteer service or enjoyment of our public lands. Every year we hear about, I'm going to go hike a trail, I'm going to go do a project because today is our day to celebrate. You may not know that BLM, Bureau of Land Management, we manage 1 in every 10 acres of land in the United States, 245 million acres. So, clearly that is a huge job, and we couldn't do it without the help of volunteers. They're absolutely essential to, getting this important work done, but also engaging with our local communities. Along the way, you're going to see some pictures of some of the past events that I've participated in, and I just hope they're, I hope they're fun to see. Go ahead and switch to the next one, please. So, this is all about strategies for success. That's why you tuned in today. And I think that really is the most important piece of all of this is spending some time pre-planning. And I really can't stress this enough, that you really need to take some time to think about what is the work that you would like to get done. There's the need to get done, the would like to get done, and volunteers really can help bring that gap together. So once you've got a plan of what the priority work is, what staff need to be involved, what logistics are a part of that work, within that scope is appropriate for volunteers to participate with. So, again, with safety in mind, enjoyment in mind, what do we need to get done, and what could we have a volunteer or volunteer group help us with? And then from there, what kinds of, and I think Angela spoke about this too, but what are some of the things that would motivate a volunteer to want to come to your volunteer project? And these types of these types of interests are what really motivate a volunteer to show up. So the point that I'm really trying to draw here is that the volunteer project and the volunteer needs, when those overlap, you have the most opportunity for success. And when I say rewards, and again, I know Angela spoke about this, but what are the things that within your volunteer project you could tease out, whether those are tangible rewards? If you come today, you'll get a t-shirt, you'll get a patch, you'll get a water bottle, like you say, maybe a pass to come back for free the next time. Or there's some intangible rewards that maybe it's a new experience. You're going to get access to an area that's not been seen by the rest of the public yet. Maybe there's going to be a new skill, new knowledge, time spent with specialists. So really, again, in this pre-planning part, think about all of those aspects. And that is what's going to really help inform the next piece, which is recruitment. So again, are you looking for folks that have some targeted skills, some specific audiences? Or is this a many hands make light work, broad approach that you need to get this work done? So again, what it is often will help you think about how you do recruitment. And so when I talk about targeted recruitment, this is where, again, is this something that you really want to focus on some specific groups or skills to come and be your volunteers? Some examples are local businesses. They already want to be your partner, no doubt about it. When we've got river outfitters, guides, and you're putting together a river cleanup day, that's a perfect partnership to come together. We also often see civic groups like Rotary, Lions clubs that want to be involved with, volunteer effort, that their members are also looking for places to meaningfully engage. School groups, absolutely, schools have reasons to want to get involved. So, back to these community partners, but then we also have stakeholders, folks that really are already involved in the work that you're doing, and they want an opportunity to get their hands in or be a part of the decisions that you're making. An example might be the Audubon Society and helping with a bird monitoring project, or archaeologists, helping with an inventory of an area where you really could use those extra hands and skills. And then, of course, we've got specialized groups. I often bring in retirees. We've got a lot of folks that have skills that they want to give back. Folks with certifications or equipment that you could really use that sort of help with. So think about, again, if there are some people with some specialized knowledge or skills that you could target to come to your event. And then sort of last is that broad recruitment. And I have to point to volunteer.gov. That's one of our main tools within the federal government to recruit for different types of volunteer projects. But I also, your community probably better than anyone else. If there's a coffee shop that everyone goes to and they have a bulletin board, utilize that, put a note there, or, newsletters. I've done radio at, public service announcements, high school career centers. I think the one thing I really want to emphasize is, even if you're doing a broad recruitment, the people prefer some kind of personal connection. Sorry, lots of P's in my remarks, but I heard from a teen group that said, you make a podcast, that's for my parents. You put it on a website, I'm never going to look at your website. But if I have someone come to me and say, hey, there's a neat opportunity you might want to get involved with, I'm going to listen. So just, keep in mind, even if you're doing a broad outreach, wherever you can, some word of mouth is really helpful. Next slide, please. If I didn't say it, sorry. All right. Well, so obviously the whole point is to motivate your volunteer and keep them coming back. So, this is the part where we've talked about, hey, Public Lands Day is a one-day event, and you really do want to create some kind of spark or ignite interest in public lands and have them come back. But, we can have it go both ways, frankly. We could have a really great day and, make some connections. But, again, there's different strategies with Public Lands Day. One might be, hey, this is a one time that we knock it out and we do a lot of great work. or this is one where I look to bring some folks in and then continue to have them come back. Within the federal government, as we all know, there's a lot of ways we can get folks involved with our programs. So really, I just think the bottom line here is retention is all about having happy volunteer. Happy volunteers, that could be a bumper sticker. So most of all is having a positive experience. And we talked about some of the other presentations, some of the examples of what makes a positive experience. But I know it was positive when they're telling others about it. I did this, I had a great day, we accomplished. So when there is some kind of personal growth or advancement, this is where we've talked about maybe a resume, I learned a new skill, I got to try out a new skill that I've been learning. These are the places where sometimes people really feel it was so positive. Also, back to we achieved something. I've really wanted to be able to hike to the end of this trail or have this bridge connect. That's an achievement goal. The ability to influence. So I mentioned this earlier, but I'm working with the federal government in an area that I really care about, and I'm part of the decision that's happening, or I'm part of how this project is going to get completed. So that ability to influence. And then lastly, that affiliation. I'm working with the archaeologists, I'm part of a trail group, that being a part of something, affiliation, whether it's the agency or frankly a sponsor, a partner group, it doesn't always have to be us. It could be something that again is a larger affiliation. I really hit this at the beginning, but having a well-planned project makes it worth everyone's time and effort. You don't have volunteers standing around wondering what they're going to do and how it's going to get done. When they show up, they know that you've got a plan for them and it all unrolls. And that matches well with this clear and consistent communication. You really want to make sure that folks know what the expectation is before they arrive, and really be open to feedback. And if you can, encourage that two-way feedback, whether it's through an evaluation or, again, just sort of that ongoing openness that you create with your volunteers. It is important to feel that there's an opportunity to provide feedback. And then lastly, I'm running close on my time here, but I also want to reiterate that everyone appreciates being told thank you. In one way or another, please don't forget that last component. Whether you offer an award, a certificate, a plaque, you write a thank you note, your official writes a letter. We often do letters from our state director, regional forester, that kind of thing. A public acknowledgement, write a feature story, put it in social media, put it in the newsletter, how great this group, this individual, and then it's already been mentioned, host a barbecue, a special ceremony, something at the end where everyone gets together. And so my last slide, I was afraid I was going to be talking too fast, but here it goes. This is my last slide for the group. Some ideas for some fun events. So as you've heard, I've been to a few, and these are some of the things that really, when you think back at your day for Public Lands Day, you just go, that was awesome. So you can see there's a picture of a Pioneer chuck wagon. They did a demonstration on how to make food in cast iron stoves. Fly fishing demonstrations, bring your mascots out. Everybody wants to be seen with, one of our characters. I've seen selfie displays where you put your head in the hole or you stand next to a friend. As you can see here, I feel like really having a special guest come. We're going to meet so-and-so, or we're going to hear a presentation at the end. Bring your music, bring your guitar, have a live music. When you finish the trail, take the hike, ride the bikes. That was my friend. The BLM is the best. Well, what do you mean? I've helped build this mountain biking trail, and then we rode the trail, and I was the first person to get to ride it. Those kinds of things. So really last, I know I'm talking, a mile a minute, but you can feel the enthusiasm I have on this last slide. Have fun. I mean, really, Hawaiian shirts, everyone wear your silly hat. And then the citizen science component. There are a lot of folks that really feel good about contributing to a bigger effort. So on this day, you're going to help us, count how many birds we have, or whatever that citizen science thing is. They're contributing to a bigger thing, and that often brings some fun. thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. And I am going to, of course, be here for questions or any brainstorming that we want to do at the end. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Maya. I love this final slide with all of your good, fun ideas. Nicole, if you're there, we go. Thank you. Just want to jump back on camera. I think there's been some really valuable conversation in the chat as well that I wanted to highlight. And I think Dr. Seaworth brought this up of, the return kind of to the grassroots recruitment efforts, encouraging people to share your posts on social media, utilizing that dedicated force of volunteers you already have to help spread the word. And I think that's a really, really good start. And that's where people trust. And I think where it's our responsibility is to make sure that it does go beyond that, because the peers typically, you're going to get people that look the same. And I think that's good to increase numbers. And I think Fred and Maya and you, Angela, you all had good ideas of how to go beyond that peer to peer. So I think it's a super valuable place to start. And I love that we're thinking about that. So we just wanted to spend some time and just briefly recap. I split it up into our 3 different categories today. So the first one's recruit. So we'll go ahead and throw that up there. We heard using active language and making sure that the volunteers, as you recruit, are going to know that their time is valued, and as they're leaving, they know that their time was valued. To outsource some of that recruitment to community organizations, to schools, to board members, to nonprofits. You already have a lot of those partnerships. And so it's just a matter of that extra ask and getting them the language so it's very easy for them to push out, or getting them the flyers. The promotional toolkit on our site already has a lot of great ideas that you can just pull from and spit right out, customize if you like. And then we have engagement. So start now. You're in the right place as you start to plan, thinking about rewards, both those intrinsic and extrinsic. I heard happy chemicals in the chat, which I just love, that people are leaving feeling energized and happy. Simplifying the sign up process and having a single clearinghouse, a single person to own those relationships, I think is really valuable. And then fun. Can't say that enough. I loved all those ideas, Maya. For retention, this last piece, I think, for me, the biggest piece that sometimes gets missed is thanking volunteers as they leave. You're stressed, you're trying to get them out, you're hungry, they're leaving, but it's very important to gather everybody back together. If that's everybody all at once, or if you want to deputize volunteers to do it for you in smaller groups, I just can't speak to that enough, so that they leave knowing that they made an impact, and they know how to reach you, and they know how to come back. And join you for the next time. So that's recap. I won't belabor any of these points because I want to make sure we have time for all the questions that came in. Why don't we start with one from the chat? Thank you. This one's for Fred. So thinking about, you have a park cleanup, and you want to make sure that you have enough staff to lead each one, but staff is limited. So what is your recommendation, to consolidate maybe, or do you have some ideas on deputizing those volunteer leaders, or what the right ratio is for volunteers?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do, there's a trail limit of 18 people per group. So that's kind of the max of what we're able to do for any project that goes out in the park. But we try to have a ratio of roughly 3 staff for every 15 people. So, and the reason for that is it doesn't have to be a park staff. It can be like an intern. It can be someone that gets identified as kind of that like group leader, because it's about having time to develop those relationships while you're doing the work. If it's too big of a group and there's only one person, you don't kind of get that personal time to develop that relationship with the park staff or the volunteer coordinator, or even the other staff from the volunteer organization that's there. So that's kind of the ratio. When it comes to kind of sending out other people, you can definitely still have that one contact, but then connect the person with the site coordinator at one of the other sites. Just because when someone gets there, they want to say, hi, my name is Jeff and I'm looking to meet with Mary. They just need to know who that person is so they can feel welcome and appreciated and expected at the event.
Yep, love that. Let's tackle a question that was submitted ahead of time for maybe Dr. Seaworth, if you're open to tackling this one. Could you share any tips to make sure that volunteers feel useful? Let's dig into that a little bit more, because I think with some of our environmental work, it's overwhelming. There's acres and acres of invasive species, or park maintenance, you know, maybe doesn't feel so cute and fun. Do you have ideas on how to make those kind of person to person or impactful connections?
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to storytelling, and why I spent a lot of time on like this idea of meaningfulness and not forgetting the meaningfulness element of our work. An example, I worked with a young group of volunteers recently, and they were just taking dead wood, moving it from one place to another place. But that, I mean, that's what they told me they were doing. We have to pick up some dried wood from here to here. But one of the students explained to me, because I'm like, oh, so what are you guys doing today? It's like, oh, we're preventing forest fires, because if this wood wasn't moved, then if there could be a fire in the area, we wouldn't be able to use this many acres of where we are, of the park, and this many people wouldn't be able to be here. He had the full story. And I think that storytelling element is really important when you show up. If you do need to say, everyone pull this weed, don't touch this, this is poison oak or whatever. When you give them specific directions, also explain the impact story in a way that they can understand it. It's understanding the why of what they're doing. But I loved that. It was from a teenage boy. When 10 others of them just said, hey, yeah, we're moving this dry wood, one of them really got the overall picture. And I think if we can help share that overall picture, our volunteers can leave feeling a lot more fulfilled at the end of the day.
I love that. That's amazing. One just came in the chat, which I love. Brittany, thank you. Could one of you or both of you share an example of your most successful event, and what elements made it so successful?
Oh, I feel like it's my turn, right? So I'll sort of jump in here. Wow, you know, it's really hard for me to say the most, you know, so I'm really, maybe one of the other panelists will have the most successful, but I will tell you what sticks out for me is those events that, you know, I touched in on this, but those that folks want to come back and check in on. They care so much about the work that they did or the experience that they had that now they're invested. And I got to tell you, I'm one of those people. So just, you know, why do we do what we do? Because we believe in what we do. And I remember my very first Public Lands Day event, I brought my family and we helped at a place that's a little more, so I live in Portland, Oregon. It's a city, and public lands, their closest BLM is 45 minutes away. So what, you know, drawing you out to a public land experience for one, but two, we were making improvements to the area, and we were learning how to build stairs to access a new part of a wild and scenic river. And I have a teenage son that still wants to come back and check in on those stairs and see how they're doing. You know, are they still there? Do we need to make any repairs? And so that just, you know, I tell you, he wasn't a teenager at the time. And I just love that that is part of what we're trying to create for so many other volunteer experiences, whether you built a bird blind and you want to, you know, see, are the birds still there, or whatever that is. But to me, what makes a successful event is that you've brought that connection and they continue to care.
That sounds great.
If I could just
Go ahead,
quickly
please.
add to that, a lot of what we're learning is with the way volunteers are thinking differently about their role. They want to have impact, but they don't have time. It's a little bit like donors. And so, you know, they want to know impact more as well. So one thing that has been helpful is to think about the spectrum when you get somebody. The first time they come to see you, they're learning about your organization. They may be the first time to the park. Maybe they came because of a friend, but you want to continue cultivating them. So those of you that also have work that involves fundraising, you talk about cultivation and stewardship. So it's that cultivation path. We introduce them to what we do, we get them to say yes a lot in between. And we're moving them to this final arc at the end where they have this personal motivation, right? That's when they feel ownership in what they're doing. And that's what helps with the retention. So maybe just thinking about that arc, that visual might help you as you're thinking of what can we do from day one to bring people back with us.
It's all about that ladder of engagement and building them up on there. Let me make sure that we have enough time to get through our resources. Nicole, if you don't mind sharing the slides. And I might ask if any of our three speakers, there was a really nice question submitted ahead of time about rural and suburban ideas. If y'all want to maybe tackle that in the chat while I just run through these quickly. I don't want to run over. So just a few NPLD announcements. Our theme this year is 30 years of care and community. So consider that when you're planning your event, when you're building your active recruitment messaging and things like that. You'll want to note the fee-free coupon deadline of August 4th. So that's 2 weeks from this Friday for those of you at a federal site. And these coupons, you are eligible to receive them if you work at a federal public land site. And you can distribute them to your volunteers, and they're able to use that coupon up to 1 year after National Public Lands Day to get into a federal site for free. So awesome resource for those of you with federal sites. Just remember that deadline comes up quick. So make sure to register your event before August or on August 4th to make sure we get those coupons mailed to you in time. If we can go to the next slide, please. We just launched new graphics. I'm so excited for these. I think they're really going to be eye-catching, and you can use them for flyers, on social media, and your e-blasts, just about anything. If you have a marketing team, or maybe that's you, you'll know kind of where these will best fit with your branding or at the event itself. And you can find them in the promotional toolkit, which is on our website. We'll drop the link for you here. Our next slide is going to talk about our Facebook group. So this is a really great place if you didn't get your questions answered today, or you just want help brainstorming on some of the ideas you heard today as you start to plan. This is the perfect place. If you are on Facebook, that link's going to be in the chat as well. And we have a lot of other really great resources on National Public Lands Day, a web page on the NEEF website. And all of these are going to be linked, and we'll also send out a note after this webinar with the recording and some of these other highlights for you. There's a lot of things maybe specific to, you want to dig more into how to promote your event. You want to dig into more about press outreach. There's something in there that will really be helpful. So that's all in the chat, which is wonderful. You guys are the reason why National Public Lands Day happens. We cannot do it without our agency partners, without the volunteer managers, without staff on the ground like yourselves. So thank you for taking the time today to learn. Thank you for planning an event, for thinking about hosting a National Public Lands Day event. For those of you who have been doing it in the past, really appreciate your time. I really look forward to seeing the registration numbers grow in our map, and wish you the best of luck as you get to the next steps. Thank you to our speakers for joining us and sharing their experience and their time with us. Really appreciate it. So to all of you guys, have a great rest of your day. Don't forget our survey as you log out. It really helps us make sure these webinars are relevant, and all the resources in the toolkit help you. So again, thank you all, and we'll sign off. Have a great rest of your day.